Welcome to CS Connect. I'm Pat.
Hey, I'm Diana.
And I'm Mike.
Today we're going to talk about the God of do-overs. So the other morning I was leaving the house. I was a little bit late, so I was rushed. Charmin asked me a question, and I did one of those the jerk moment things that sometimes we do as spouses, and I was really short with her. So as I'm driving, I felt God just convicting me and saying, you need to call her and apologize. But it got me thinking about how important do-overs are for us. In fact, when we read the Bible, it's actually full of stories of these great men and women of God. And sometimes we put them on a pedestal, but we forget that they made some major mistakes and needed do-overs.
They didn't live perfectly.
Yeah.
Right.
Book of Psalms. A lot of those Psalms were written by David after he had one of the biggest failures of his life.
Like he murdered somebody, he had adultery, he was this man of position and influence, and he misused it.
This is the guy after God's heart, as it says in Scripture.
Yeah.
Crazy.
So do-overs are things that I think God certainly gives to us, but we need to give to other people as well. Peter's another one. Peter failed Jesus on the night that Jesus needed him more than any other time, and more than any other time in all of Jesus' life here on earth. That was the night he needed Jesus. And Peter fails him.
Right.
But God gives him a do-over.
I think do-overs are hard, though. It's not always intuitive to either ask for a do-over, to give yourself permission to have a do-over, or even to give a do-over to somebody else. So what does that look like in both of your lives? What does asking for a do-over or lending a do-over look like?
I think for me, it's like being raised in more of a religious kind of church and home. I think it was the moment that I realized that God is a God of do-overs, right? The moment that we actually accept that God provides grace and provides a second chance and provides a new beginning when we do screw up, that's the God we have. It's so easy for us to fall into this trap of thinking God's just keeping the checklist of rights and wrongs, and that the rights have to outweigh the wrongs, and we have to have small wrongs, not big wrongs on the list. But God looks at all those things, and his forgiveness is rich.
What's radical is it says that we're made righteous for those of us who've accepted what Jesus did with his life, death, and resurrection, but we're made righteous. We're in right standing with God forever. Like today, yesterday, tomorrow, we're in right standing. It's this radical gift of grace. Awesome. And so do-overs come back to this, like, hey, how do we come back to Jesus and the ways of Jesus? It's not about this perfection of thinking and living. It's this coming back to the grace that was bought for you. That's crazy when it comes to do-overs.
And you're almost saying that the gospel, you're both saying this, that the gospel informs us that we've already been given that do-over before we even need the do-over.
There you go.
Yeah, that's right.
Wow.
Yeah. Cool.
And I think because of that, one of the things I've been thinking about in our conversation is what does it look like for us to concretely start asking for do-overs of like you did with your wife of, hey, can we have a do-over? I was wrong there. Or, hey, I didn't say that clearly. Can we have a do-over in the midst of that?
That's good.
Or even lending that to other people, sometimes saying, hey, let's circle back to that conversation. I think we're both not as stressed in this moment. Or, hey, let's circle back.
Yeah.
Good.
Because if we understand the do-overs that God gives us, it would seem, if we really understand, it would seem that it would only be natural that we would give those same do-overs to others. If we get it, then shouldn't we give it?
Yeah. Mike, you were saying something powerful about this the other day. You were talking about, you kind of mentioned it, but how whenever you're feeling stuck, there's something about the nature of God in this conversation of do-overs that we get to think about differently as Christ followers.
I think it's that moment that we realize as followers of Jesus that we have a God who brings new life to dead things. And when we mess up, when we screw something up, that we can come to God, and God doesn't just see that and show some forgiveness, but God actually breathes new life to something that's ugly and nasty and cancerous in our life.
And so doesn't he also do that, though, to things that maybe they aren't ugly, nasty, cancerous? He does breathe new life into the gunk, but he also does to the mundane and to the disappointment and to like the disillusionment. That God is a God of do-overs, of what life is like today doesn't mean it's what life is like tomorrow. God is a God of new.
When I think that's we're people of faith and people of hope. And Paul talked about this, his perspective of, hey, I'm going to forget what lies behind and I'm going to strain and look forward to what's coming and what's ahead. And so God's always seen tomorrow. He's seen the next thing that can be done in our life. And when we operate out of that future and that hope, there's a promise for us and there's a new life that we can find. even in the mundane. I love that. That's good.
Yeah, so what a great reminder for us today that we serve a God of do-overs. Remember that today. You may need a do-over. You may need to give someone else a do-over. Thanks for joining us today. We'll see you next time on CS Connect.